A man sat silently in front of his phone, broadcasting to the world through Facebook Live. His face blank, his voice eerily calm. He had just done the unthinkable. He confessed to shooting the mother of his child. 11 bullets, not just her. He targeted her grandmother and her uncle too. Her name is LaSonya Agee, a woman who once loved him, a mother and survivor. But this time, she almost didn't survive. So what pushed him to do it? Why would a man who once promised love and family become the face of her nightmare? This is the story of LaSonya, a woman trapped in a cycle of abuse, always hoping tomorrow would be different. But when she finally tried to leave, that's when everything changed. LaSonya Agee's journey began in Chicago, a city known as much for its spirit as it is for its violence. With millions trying to make it each day, Chicago's streets are a battleground where crime often wins. In 2020 alone, the city recorded over 770 homicides. But for LaSonya, the real threat wasn't outside her door. It was much closer. It lived with her. She was no stranger to hardship. Losing her mother at a young age, LaSonya was forced to grow up fast. Life didn't give her many chances, so she carved out her own path. Tough, determined, and fiercely independent. She refused to become another statistic. After graduating from Proviso East High School, LaSonya was on the move. She landed a solid job in the U.S. Postal Service, a symbol of stability for many. But that wasn't enough for her. She had bigger dreams. On the side, she built a small cosmetics business, selling products online, staying up late to package orders, chasing more than just survival. She was chasing success. She wanted more for herself and for her family. But just as things were starting to look up, he entered her life, Larry, and everything began to change. In the beginning, it felt like everything was falling into place. Love blossomed, hope filled the air, and in 2017, they welcomed a baby boy into the world. To LaSonya, it looked like the start of a real family, something solid, something safe. But what she didn't see was what hid beneath Larry's surface. He wasn't the man she thought he was. At first, the warning signs were subtle. Controlling behavior disguised as concern. A little too much interest in where she was going, who she was talking to. Disagreements over money, parenting, or plans for the future slowly twisted into something more toxic. Larry's possessiveness turned suffocating. His jealousy wasn't just about fear. It was about control. He began cutting her off from the people who gave her strength. Her family, her friends, her support system. And then the anger escalated. What began as occasional shouting soon turned physical. Small acts of violence that LaSonya tried to downplay, hoping they were isolated moments, bad days that wouldn't return. But they did. And they got worse. The bruises became harder to hide, and her bright energy faded. And the man who once held her close became the source of her deepest fear. Still, she stayed. Not because she wanted to, but because every time she tried to leave, the threats became sharper, more dangerous. And just like that, her world closed in. Piece by piece, he isolated her until escape felt impossible. Then LaSonya had finally reached her breaking point. The fear, the bruises, the sleepless nights, wondering if she'd survive another day. It had drained her soul. And in that moment of clarity, she made a decision, a real one. She wasn't going to live like this anymore. She couldn't. But leaving Larry wouldn't be simple, and she knew it. He was the kind of man who thrived on power, and she was about to take that away from him. Late one night, with nothing but determination and fear guiding her, LaSonya began to quietly gather her belongings. Each item she packed felt like a step toward freedom, deliberate, cautious, and silent. She couldn't let him hear. She couldn't let him suspect. Not yet. Her escape had to be perfect. She found a new apartment, a place she could finally call her own. It wasn't grand, but it was hers. It represented hope, a new chapter, a breath of air after being underwater for too long. But the nightmare didn't end there. Larry wasn't done with her. He never really let go. She followed all the right steps, filed for a restraining order, trusted the system, and hoped the law would stand between her and the man who tormented her. But for someone like Larry, a piece of paper meant nothing. Rules didn't apply to him. One evening, as LaSonya sat alone in her new space, trying to rebuild the quiet she had longed for, the doorbell rang. Her heart jumped. She looked through the peephole. It was him, Larry. Her stomach dropped. She called the police in a panic, whispering her fear. But by the time they arrived, he had already vanished, like a shadow slipping through cracks the law couldn't seal. The next day, it got worse. He came back, not to talk, not to plead, but to destroy. He forced his way in, tearing through her apartment like a storm. Her things were smashed, scattered, violated. He wanted to make a point. You'll never be free of me. Everything she had tried to build gone. Her sense of peace, shattered. He had turned her refuge into another crime scene. This wasn't about love. Thighs wasn't even about anger. It was about control. Larry wanted to own her, to remind her that no matter where she ran, he would always be one step behind. LaSonya had nowhere left to go. And with her son and family still at risk, with safety slipping further from reach, she felt she had no real choice. She returned, not out of love, not out of weakness, but for survival. As the days dragged on, LaSonya's life became a cycle of survival. The violence escalated, physically, emotionally, and publicly. Bruises bloomed across her skin like reminders she couldn't erase. Her arms ached and her eyes were swollen from blows. And when Larry wasn't hurting her in private, he was tearing her down in front of others, shouting, threatening, and shaming her without remorse. Each attack chipped away at her, not just on the outside, but deep within. Her confidence, her joy, her sense of self, fading under the constant storm of abuse. But still, she refused to completely break. She held onto one thing, her will to escape. Bit by bit, she saved money. Every dollar tucked away became a silent act of defiance. And when she finally had enough to buy a car, it felt like a breakthrough. A small, rusted vehicle. But to her, it was everything. A sign she could take control again and a way out. But freedom doesn't come easy when you're chained to someone like Larry. The moment he found out about the car, his rage ignited. He tracked it down, cornered it in a garage, and destroyed it. Dented metal, shattered glass. He reduced her hard-earned symbol of hope to twisted wreckage. To Larry, it was never just a car. It was her courage, and he wanted to crush it. After that, the abuse worsened. The pain became impossible to hide. Colleagues noticed, and her supervisor noticed. The way she flinched, the way she moved, strained and cautious. Her energy was gone. Her focus slipped. And eventually, the burden became too heavy to carry to work each day. She started missing shifts. And with every absence, her grip on stability slipped a little further away. Just when everything felt like it was falling apart, a small light appeared in LaSonya's darkness. Her supervisor, who had quietly observed the bruises, the silence, the strain, took notice. And instead of turning away, they stepped in. They organized a quiet support system, assigning co-workers to walk with LaSonya after her shifts so she'd never have to leave alone. It was subtle, but it mattered. She wasn't invisible anymore. Then came an unexpected offer from the Postal Service. A chance to transfer, a chance to leave, and to start somewhere new. Somewhere safe. For the first time in months, LaSonya felt something she hadn't dared to feel, hope. She began saving again, quietly, carefully, and eventually, she bought another car. Tucked away and unseen, it was her silent declaration that she wasn't giving up, not yet. But Larry was always watching. One day, he went through her phone and saw the photos. That was all it took, and his fury exploded. Once again, he found the car and destroyed it, drove it into a garage, and crushed it until nothing recognizable remained. The screech of metal against concrete replayed in her head, long after the physical wreckage was gone. The hope she had built, piece by piece, was now a pile of twisted steel. And just when she thought it couldn't get worse, he crossed a line she never saw coming. He took their son. No warning, no explanation. He used their child as a weapon, a way to control her completely. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was desperation. Her heart wasn't just broken, it was hijacked. And when she turned to the police, their answer cut even deeper. It's a custody issue, they said. There's nothing we can do. LaSonya didn't stop trying. She filed another restraining order. She pleaded for help. But Larry didn't care. The law meant nothing to him. You'll never see your son again unless you come back, he told her flatly. It was blackmail, emotional torture. And for LaSonya, it felt like the world had caved in. She kept trying to hold it together, going back to work, pushing forward, trying to hold onto some piece of her dream. But everything she had fought for was slowly slipping through her fingers. Valentine's Day was supposed to be a day of love, but for LaSonya, it became something else entirely. A moment of terror she'd never forget. That morning, she slid behind the wheel of her car, hoping to steal just a few hours of freedom, a breath of air away from the storm that had become her life. But as she pulled off, she heard something strange, faint, like a shift in weight, a whisper of movement, enough to freeze her. Then she stopped and opened the trunk, and there he was. Larry, hiding, waiting and watching her from the darkness, like a ghost refusing to leave. On the seat behind her was a gift, something meant to look romantic. But there was nothing sweet about it. It was a warning. You'll never leave me. Soon after, LaSonya's job, the one safe place she had left, crumbled beneath her. She was called into the office and told she was being let go. The reason? A customer had claimed she was dumping mail, including items that contained her identity and even her son's birth certificate. It was a setup, one that only Larry could have orchestrated. He wanted her cornered, dependent, crushed, and it worked. This time it broke her. With nowhere left to turn, LaSonya bounced between hotel rooms, too afraid to stay in one place for long. Friends couldn't shelter her. Her own family was now at risk, and Larry was becoming increasingly unstable, increasingly dangerous. And worst of all, people around her had started to give up on her, convinced she'd just go back to him again like before. But this time, LaSonya wasn't the same woman. Something inside her had changed, and she wasn't going to break again. Just a week later, February 21st, 2021, it began like any other day. LaSonya had returned home to the 7800 block of South Muskegon Avenue in Chicago, tired, worn down but alive. She parked her car and exhaled. Just a breath, just a moment to rest her thoughts. Then she heard another car pull up. It was Larry. He eased in beside her like it was just another conversation, calm, calculated. He spoke through the car window, trying to reel her back in, trying to convince her to come home. But this time, she said no. She is firm, and it was final. What happened next unraveled in seconds. Her uncle, standing nearby, sensed danger. He stepped forward, but before a word could be spoken, Larry stepped out of his car and pulled a gun ANS aimed at her uncle and fired. With one shot and one body down, LaSonya's heart pounded. She ran, bolted toward the house, but Larry wasn't finished. He aimed the gun at her and pulled the trigger, again and again and again. She collapsed as bullets tore through her body, and her grandmother was next, and then he turned toward the car. However, the young son was inside, but Larry sprayed bullets into the vehicle, and an innocent child witnessed to the worst nightmare imaginable. By some miracle, the boy survived, and through the chaos, he climbed out, crawled to his mother. His voice trembled as he whispered, "Come on, Mama. Come on." A child trying to wake his mother from a scene no child should ever see. Neighbors came running. They called for help. Sirens echoed in the distance. But Larry? He fled. Not into hiding, but onto Facebook Live. There, with a shaky camera and a hollow stare, he confessed, "I love that woman dearly, bro," he mumbled. "Ain't nobody gonna see me no more. I'm not running. They can come get me." His voice trembled with false remorse, his anger twisting every word. He rambled about pressure, confusion, regret, without ever taking real responsibility. He knew the police were coming, but it was as if he didn't understand the full weight of what he had done. Back at the scene, LaSonya, her uncle, and her grandmother were rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Though she had been shot 11 times, none of the bullets struck any vital organs. Most of the damage was concentrated in her lower body. Her pelvis was shattered, and her right leg suffered extensive injuries. Her liver had also been impacted, but she lived. So did her grandmother. So did her uncle, despite being hit 8 times. The physical wounds were brutal, but survivable. The emotional wounds? Far deeper. The fear, the helplessness, the terror of that day. Those scars would stay with them forever. While LaSonya lay in a hospital bed, barely able to speak, police wasted no time identifying the man responsible. Witnesses had seen everything. There was no doubt Larry, the father of her child, had turned their lives into a war zone. When LaSonya was finally strong enough to talk, she recounted every terrifying detail. She spoke of disbelief, how the man she once loved could unleash such cruelty. She believed the shooting wasn't just meant to hurt her. It was meant to silence anyone who could tell the truth. Her uncle, her grandmother, even her child. She had survived, but she didn't feel whole. Her son, far too young to understand it all, had watched the unthinkable, his father attempting to kill his mother. That moment would be seared into his memory for the rest of his life. Even with Larry gone, fear lingered. He had fled, and until he was in custody, LaSonya lived in constant fear that he would return to finish what he started. Weeks went by, but no sign of him. Then finally, authorities found him holed up in an apartment on Mary Jane Street in Mansoura, Louisiana. He surrendered quietly. No resistance, no fight left in him. He was extradited back to Chicago and charged with 3 counts of attempted murder and 3 counts of aggravated battery. It was the beginning of justice. The first time accountability seemed real. Still in the hospital, LaSonya began to feel a small shift, a glimmer of hope. Larry's arrest didn't erase the pain, but it gave her something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. Desperate to rebuild, she created a GoFundMe. In her message, she thanked the world for keeping her alive in spirit. She opened up about the hidden costs of leaving an abusive partner. She explained how leaving nearly cost her everything, even her life. The fundraiser brought in over $11,000, more than just money. It was proof that strangers across the country cared, that she wasn't alone. But LaSonya's story raised painful questions. Why hadn't the system protected her sooner? She had filed reports, ached for help, told the police. And yet, nothing truly happened until bullets flew. Her case echoes a sad truth. Too often, victims aren't taken seriously until it's almost too late. LaSonya is here to remind us, abuse is never okay, and walking away isn't easy, but survival is possible. She lived, but she knows many don't. To anyone trapped in fear, reach out, get help. You don't have to wait for a tragedy to be heard. Her story is a chilling example of how ignored warning signs can lead to disaster, and a call to action for all of us to do better. LaSonya's strength, her decision to keep fighting for her son and her future, is a powerful reminder of resilience. But she's not alone. Millions are living in fear right now, and too many suffer in silence. We need stronger systems. We need better protection. We need to listen before it's too late. If LaSonya's story moved you, don't let it end here. Like this video. Subscribe for more real stories that matter. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And in the comments, tell us, what more can be done to help victims of domestic violence? Do you think this tragedy could have been prevented? Your voice matters, and your words could be the lifeline someone else needs. Let's keep the conversation going, because speaking up can save lives.